alive. That's right. I'm back and I'm alive. All right. Got my butt kicked though. Had a couple of little guys come and attack me. A couple of weekends, they beat my behind. And hey, you know what? You don't know what you don't know, and you do the best you can and everything. But we got the good doctor here, Dr. John Lucas here, joining us today to educate us a little bit more about the dangers, if you will, of food poisoning and some of the other things that it can lead to. We're certainly going to talk about kidney health. That's one of the things I think that we need to definitely talk about, because that kind of beat me up a little bit too, right now. But listen, guys, it's been interesting. I've been able to try to do some things in the background. As you well know, we have the IKF East Coast Classic coming up here real soon, October 8th, 9th, and 10th. What a great weekend we're planning in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, guys. You should get registered for that event, akpromotions.org. Registration's in progress right now. If you miss out on that tournament, come on, I don't know what you're thinking. Full contact action is going to be going on October 8th through the 10th. We also have our 9-round professional fight going on that weekend at the Landmark Resort there in Myrtle Beach. Again, more information at akpromotions.org. Also want to thank our sponsors, Eastern Offset Printing, for all they do for us, guys. Eastern Offset Printing, they're out of Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. Be sure to check them out for any of your printing needs. Also, we're going to say this is also sponsored by the East Coast Classic and the Georgia Classic as well. Okay, I want to quickly, before I bring on the good doctor, I want to just quickly acknowledge someone. And I was not able to do my show a little bit earlier. There was some technical difficulties, with Mr. Sean Kelly, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to him a little bit later. And one of the things I was going to bring up about how we as martial artists influence people and we don't even know it. So, working on the things that we do things out of passion and all of that. But one of the things that I just want to say quickly before I bring on the doctor, out of the blue, last night, someone who I don't remember, they were a student of mine, 30-some, 40-some years ago in Dillon, South Carolina. And this person goes by the name DP. I'll just leave it at that. And he wrote this long letter telling me about his experience at my club and the confidence and things that he obtained from that. And some of the things that he went through in life and how those teachings helped take him to another level and give him the confidence to do what he does. In fact, he's actually a police officer today. So we want to thank him for his service. And I'm really thankful for the fact that you took the time to acknowledge that some of the things that you've learned over the years or learned from my instructions way back in the day helped you, be the best you could be in life. That's what it's all about. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move right through this. We're going to be speaking again with Dr. John Lucas there. We're going to go ahead and welcome him to our show. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the one and the only Dr. John Lucas. How you doing, sir?
Good. How you doing today, Johnny?
Good. I will also say one of the busiest doctors in this region, that is for sure. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing as soon as you leave the show here.
Yeah, there's a really good MMA card here in Greenville, South Carolina this evening. There's a Canadian promotion, X-MMA, that's partnered with a local promoter out of Myrtle Beach, Andy Hall, to put on a really nice fight card at the what used to be the Bilo Center, now the Bon Secours Wellness Arena, right here in Greenville. And they have a lot of the top tier professional MMA fighters from the South Carolina in surrounding regions fighting, and quite a few former UFC veterans that are coming down. So it's a really high quality card. I would put it on the same, skill level as a typical like UFC fight night card.
Wow.
There should be there's some real good talent there. Jeremiah Prophet, who you know real well from the IKF circuit, and he's going to be defending, is that right, his belt?
Well,
or is he going
defending? He's going to be actually fighting in the 9-round professional kickboxing match on October 9th in Mobile.
So, somebody who you're well familiar with and looking forward to him displaying a striking skill at your upcoming event will be on the card tonight, along with a lot of other top tier guys local. Right. So it's going to be quite an event.
Yeah, it looked like a really nice card of fights and everything. Wishing everybody well. Of course, I'll be waiting to see how Jeremiah comes out. It doesn't affect my show unless he gets hurt badly or something like that, which we don't want him to do, right? But
Yeah.
listen, it is what it is. He's a fighter, and all, and it's probably going to be very entertaining. But I did see the lineup, and looks like a very well done card. And we're wishing the promotions all the luck in the world, and all the fighters, go out there and do your thing. Okay, so here we go. We're going to talk a little bit about this food poisoning thing. So a couple of weeks ago, listen, on my birthday weekend, right, the day before, I was on doing my, clip, talking about, feeling fine at 59, right? And I was in there talking about how great I felt, and I did, and I do. I feel great. And also, I went out to eat, right? And while I was out, I love seafood, right? And I just dove into some seafood pasta, and stuff. And not only that, my appetizer was also like a Cajun shrimp, So I was just kind of putting. A few hours later, right? I started to feel like a cramp or something going on in my stomach. And then all of a sudden, it just like maybe in the middle of the night, it just started coming up on both ends, right? I was vomiting on everything, right? So first of all, I want to ask you a sincere question, Doc. Why did food poisoning choose me to pick on?
I don't know, man. That's a good question.
Well,
it doesn't seem to discriminate. Usually, it'll get anybody it can get its hands on. I think everybody's had it at some point in time. Hopefully, it'll be something you never have to experience again. I last had it when I was still in college, and I still remember that. It was not a funny thing.
Yeah. Give us some ideas, though, of how it happens.
So most food poisoning occurs because there's some issue with the food that you're eating. There was, it was warm, but not quite hot, or, should have been colder and a little bit too warm, that let some sort of pathogen multiply in it, usually bacterial. And then either the bacteria itself, or in a lot of cases, it's a toxin that the bacteria produces, ends up in the food. And then when you eat it, that affects your GI tract, and your body says, "Ooh, we don't like this stuff, so it's got to go." And it goes out as quickly as possible, usually both ends. And depending on what the issue is, sometimes if it's a toxin, it's a relatively short thing, where it happens for a couple of hours, because once the toxin is gone, you're good. If it's an actual bacteria or other, substance that's in the food that's going to actually infect your GI tract, sometimes it can be longer standing. And some people actually end up needing to be on medications to, address the infection to make sure that it's gone, depending on what it was.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a minute, because again, it beat me up pretty darn bad. So where does the vomiting, is that something that is my body kind of saying is trying to protect me somehow? Why do I guess the simple question is, why do I vomit?
Yeah, so it's exactly that. It's to try to get rid of whatever it is that's causing the problem. It's a protective mechanism of your body. Your body kind of thinks, when I say thinks, your brain's not really involved in this. It's all reaction, but your body's like, well, this is, there's something in here that's not good, so it's got to go. It's the same thing, like, if you drink too much and you get intoxicated and throw up, it's the same thing. Your body's like, wow, something's in here that doesn't belong, so it's got to go. We're going to throw up. Same reason why, a lot of times people, when they see somebody else throw up, it makes them sick to their stomach. It's because they say that, evolutionarily, humans usually did stuff together. So if, there's 10 or 15 of us killed something and are eating it, and all of a sudden you get sick, my body goes, well, I just ate the same thing Johnny did. So we might as well get rid of this now before we get sick like he is right now. So it's all a protective mechanism. I just wish that there was a protective mechanism that wasn't so unpleasant to go through.
So then I go and I try to keep fluids down. Literally, I couldn't keep anything down, right? So I then start, every time I drink, and literally, it was like if I drink it was coming up in the trash or the commode or whatever, right? Water, all liquid, right? So obviously that led to dehydration, right?
Right.
So kind of give me an idea of how that works. Is it like drawing literally fluids out of my veins? I mean, it's like,
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. It for
oh,
sure is. So, when you're throwing up and having diarrhea, you're losing way more fluid than you would be if your body was operating normally. And you can't take in what you're trying to take in. But one of the ways diarrhea in particular happens is your colon will draw fluid out of your vascular system and put it into your colon to loosen stuff up and to get it out. So you can get dehydrated really quick if you get significant food poisoning because you can't keep any fluids down and you're losing fluids, like you said, oftentimes out of both ends. So dehydration is a big deal. It's actually very dangerous for young kids. That's why if you look at like the World Health Organization statistics about causes of death in infants around the world, dehydration due to foodborne illness is one of the biggest killers of kids around the world.
Really? Wow. Well, like I said, I was really concerned, but then, so I couldn't hold anything down. But then all of a sudden, it was like major cramps. Now, when I say major cramps, look, I'm a pretty tough guy. I consider myself a pretty tough guy, right? And I take care of myself. I eat right. I'm in pretty good shape. But literally, man, I was in a ball on the floor, almost screaming, to the top, I mean, it was like somebody literally walked up and punched me right in the kidney, right? So I'm like, what? And it felt like I'd wrecked. This is what it felt like. I literally wrecked my kidney because I was puking and all these other things. And I just didn't know what was going on. And it got so bad that I eventually went to the emergency room. So when I went to the emergency room, right, that they, and here's a weird thing. I had taken some Imodium, right? My wife said, hey, why don't you take this and all this to kind of calm it down. So I sat there for like an hour and a half, how long the waits are. And I'm sitting there and I started feeling better. I mean, to the point within an hour and a half, I got up and I was like, oh, I'm okay. Well, I feel okay. So I left, right? The next day, when I started trying to eat again, I started getting these major league cramps and pain in my kidney area. I mean, it was really bad. So then I go to the fast man, right? And what is it, doctor, they diagnosed me with? Kidney stones. Somehow I had developed. Could you tell me how that might have happened in the fact that, from the dehydration and everything, that then I would develop kidney stones?
Yeah, so there's two possibilities. One is it's possible you never actually had food poisoning in the first place and that your original issue was the kidney stone. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but some people get really significant nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea from having a kidney stone. And then the other more likely scenario is that you probably have some pre-existing predilection towards kidney stones. I mean, you're just being a man, for one thing, kind of puts you in that potential category. They're not uncommon. When you start telling all your friends and family that you had a kidney stone, you'll be surprised at how many folks that are like, oh yeah, I had one of those too. Yeah. And they all say the same thing next. It was awful because it's one of the worst kind of pains that you can experience. But it's possible that you have a predilection towards that, and then getting dehydrated because of the vomiting and diarrhea just kicked you over the edge and led to the kidney stone, because dehydration is definitely a significant risk factor for kidney stones. One of the orthopedic surgeons that I worked with in medical school used to walk around. This was before it was a cool thing to do. Used to walk around with a gallon jug of water and drank it like crazy.
Wow.
And it was an inconvenience for him because, I mean, he had to scrub out of surgeries to go to the bathroom.
Wow.
But it's because when he was a Marine, he got a kidney stone because he got dehydrated. And he said it was the worst thing that ever happened to him. And this guy had a Purple Heart. He got shot, and he would rather get shot again than get a kidney stone. So he said that, he goes, it's worth it. He goes, they told me drink more fluid, and other things to avoid kidney stones. And he said, so I'm doing that because I don't want to ever have that happen to me again. Right. So the dehydration is likely what pushed you over.
Yeah. So, but like I have a note there about kidneys being hit in the kidneys as well, since this is kind of like a fighter kind of thing. That I shouldn't even ask why. That is probably why that is dangerous. But is it such a sensitive area, is not well protected, why a punch or a kick to the kidneys could, take someone really out badly?
Yeah, the kidneys they're sort of well protected, but not greatly protected. But I mean, it's a sensitive organ. They're not meant for taking contact there.
Mhm.
So if you get hit in the kidney, I mean, I'm sure you know somebody, if not yourself, after a fight, especially if you've blocked a lot of kicks by kind of turning
Yeah,
and you wind up taking it to the kidney. The next day, your urine's interesting colors like blood. And that's because you've damaged the tissue inside your kidney and the actual filter is not working right. Just like if you stick your finger through the air filter or oil filter in your car, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So you end up getting stuff coming out that's not supposed to be there.
right,
So it's
right.
just it's sensitive tissue and can be damaged and doesn't like getting bounced around.
Well, that's interesting though, because I did have the blood urine type thing. Actually, I didn't get hit in the kidneys. It felt like I got hit in the kidneys, but I did have some of the blood in the urine thing as well.
Uh,
And I
you
went to
mean
the
right
liver.
with this? Yeah, so that's very common with kidney stones as well for the same reason, because the
Okay.
effect of the kidney stone is not great for the kidney.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right. And then, obviously they put me on medications, which, took me out of working out because I can't, they said some of the stuff I could not, they said, you can't hardly even be in the sun. You can't work out that hard. And listen, man, excuse me, not man, as in not man, but doc, is that, that's hard for me. Right. Not to work out. Right. I mean, it's been a week and a half now and I feel like, you know what I mean? I'm like, you're going crazy and everything. And but no, they just, hey, you can't go and do that kind of strenuous workout and everything because it could just do a little bit more damage. Question is, I noticed that it's still a little sensitive in there, right? The jerking and things that you do, could that actually injure more, make it more dangerous for me?
It's probably not the jerking and things like that. It's just coughing and stuff like that, where you're, contracting all the muscles in your abdomen doesn't present a danger, but it's probably little shocks to what you get, like for kicking a bag, when you swing your leg and you hit the bag, there's a shock that goes along with that goes up
Right.
towards the kidney. And then working out also, it does the potential of two things. One, you're going to sweat, so that leads towards potential dehydration. And then two, when you work out really hard, you oftentimes can get little muscle damage that causes something called myoglobin to leave your muscles that are injured and go into your body, and your kidney has to filter that out. So it increases the protein workload of your kidneys, and that can potentially be an issue. So they want you to kind of take it easy to make sure that you don't end up doing something that's going to make your kidney have to work harder when it's already damaged. It's just like taking time off after you get, your quote unquote bell rung and have a concussion.
Okay.
You got to give your brain a chance to get back to baseline before you start bouncing it around again. Otherwise, you're much more likely to have a bigger problem. Because what you don't want to have is a kidney stone that affects your kidney, and then you start feeling a little bit better and you push it too hard and injure your kidney again, because you'll end up worse than you were at the beginning with the second injury. Just like if you have a bruise and it gets kind of okay and then you get hit again, it's worse than it was after the initial injury typically.
Well, so my in this recovery process, there has been damage probably to my kidney, so I got to let that heal, right? Is there something that I should be eating or drinking in particular, or maybe not drinking as much or whatever? Or what about even other medications like, sleep meds and things like, does that, because all of that has to kind of filter through the kidney, right?
Yeah.
Should I look at all of that?
So, a couple of things. So, water should be the main thing that you're drinking, because you want to make sure you stay really well hydrated. They typically would advise you to avoid tea. And I say that as someone who likes to drink tea, just because certain types of kidney stones are more prone to, if you drink tea, there's a chemical in the tea that makes that particular kind of kidney stone more likely to happen. Okay. So if they didn't mention that, that's not the kind of kidney stone you have. You don't have to worry about that. And then I would try to avoid excessive amounts of protein. So like if you're usually, the guy that like works out and then drinks a protein shake, I'd probably cool it on that for a week or two until everything's definitely working normally. And then medication wise, the two main ways that medications are excreted from the body are either they're metabolized by the liver or excreted by the kidney. Mm-hmm. And you can look up which ones are which. So if there's a particular medication that you're worried about, then you can look it up and see if it has either renal, what they call nephrotoxic effects, meaning it would be toxic to your kidney. So the biggest examples of that would be like, I wouldn't want you taking a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. So if you usually take naproxen or Advil, Aleve, I wouldn't take that until you're sure that your kidneys are back to working the way they ought to. Tylenol, same thing. That's not great for your kidneys.
Okay.
Prescription medication, it kind of depends on the medication, what you're taking it for, how important it is that you take it regularly, and what its potential risks to your kidneys are.
Right. Cool. So when we talk about the long-term effects, and you mentioned the word renal, and I've used, been in the area of dialysis and understand about that. I really did not know, though, that there was actually a part of the kidney functions and area that was actually called renal. So when they talk about renal failure, can you kind of elaborate a little bit on what that is?
Yeah, so renal failure is just the medical version of kidney failure. It means the same thing. And the definition of that, there's a substance in your body called creatinine. It's a metabolism of protein breakdown, and that's one of the easiest ways to see how well your kidney's working. So your creatinine level should be at a certain point. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. It depends on what hospital, but let's say your creatinine level is supposed to be 1. If your kidneys aren't working really well and they check your creatinine level in your blood, it'll be 2, 3, 5, 10, 20. And that gives you a very good idea of how well your kidneys are working, as does like the rate of rise and rate of fall of that. And renal failure is when your kidneys filtering function has been damaged to the point that it's not effective to keep your blood clean and working the way it's supposed to. So it's to get back to the air filter kind of scenario. If you have an air filter, for like your car, or the air filter on your furnace, if it's working perfectly, the air going through goes through no problem. And on the other side, all you get is clean air. And then if that filter isn't working well, it'd be like in this example, it wouldn't be so much the filter being clogged, though that can happen to your kidneys. It'd be more like if I came to your house with a pencil and poked a bunch of holes through the filter. If I poked a couple holes through the filter, when you looked at the air going into your furnace or into your car, there'd be more dust and dirt in it than you would expect. And if I poked enough holes in it, eventually there'd be so much dust and dirt, it'd be like you didn't have a filter there in the first place, and it would affect your engine or it would affect your furnace. So if your kidneys are not filtering and getting rid of those waste products, they start building up and causing other effects in the body. And that's when dialysis, or, basically hooking you up to an artificial kidney, becomes necessary.
Wow. And then that's when it really started getting serious then and everything. But
yeah,
this is obviously, I want to make sure that I avoid that, any kind of thing like that and all. And I can't think I'm a long way away from that, I would like to think, but it's certainly something to keep eyes on. I want to just suggest to fighters, remind fighters and people in general that food poisoning is very serious, and you have to be careful about what you eat, as in always and all. And but more than that, about what it can lead to, because I'm telling you right now, I got beat up, right? And I got caught off guard. And I'm someone who eats pretty healthy and takes care of myself. So I think my recovery has been pretty good because perhaps of my fitness and stuff like that and all that. And so that was a good thing. So the doctor, and I'm sure hopefully it sounds like the doctor's nodding, that is good too. I want to change gears really quick because I'm not going to be long. I know you have a lot going on today. I wanted to ask you for 2 questions, and one is going to be about, and I kind of alluded to it, I think, at some other point, but I need to get your medical perspective on something here. As you well know, I have been talking a lot about the round thing, about extending the rounds, as we have the 9-round fights, the 9-round fight coming up, which is the change. It is the change, Doc. You got to understand, no one else, as far as I know in the world right now, they're all doing 5-round fights, pretty much. And now going back to these round things, this is something that's really, it has intrigued people. People are actually excited about it, and some people really welcome it. So I've gotten all these different scenarios, and they make sense when I explain them to people about why we want to do more rounds, even though it's less time. It was not less time. It's that the shorter time. It's not a 3-minute round or a 5-minute round. It's a 2-minute round, just like the days of old. So I've had all these reasons from an entertainment perspective, from a strategy perspective, from, and all of that. However, I want to just ask you, and I don't know, I have no idea what you're going to say, but I want to ask you anyway while I have you on the phone. So you deal with fights all the time. So If you have a fighter in a longer fight, right? Let's just say an MMA fight where they're fighting five-minute rounds, 25 minutes. In that 5 minutes, they're out there and they having to drill good, do for 5 minutes. Okay. It's hard for me to think that if they were allowed a break somehow in that would not be somewhat beneficial, that it would hurt them in any way, I don't think. Can you explain to me, or if I am correct in possibly thinking that the fact that I'm extending the rounds, 9 rounds, is still only 24 minutes compared to 25 in MMA and 36 in boxing, talking about world class world title fights. The fact that I'm adding that only 2 minutes, you're going to be actually exerting yourself. Now you got a minute. You got another 2 minutes. Now you got a minute. Now you got another 2. Now you got a minute. All the way up into 9 rounds in this case. Is there some medical way or way of looking at this that could possibly be healthier for the fighter, and the fact that they have more rejuvenation time, they have more time with their trainer, etc.? Any kind of medical advice or that you might could point out on this?
So, the scenario in MMA and the scenario in your fight sports are a little bit different because of the lack of the grappling aspect. So get back to that in a second, but concentrating on striking. So either kickboxing or boxing, back in the day, title fights were 15, and I mean, way back in the day before our time, they had fights that went on for hours. They had 20 plus rounds. And so that's not a good idea. There's a point where you've gotten too long of a period of time. Inside of once you kind of come over with a reasonable length of time to exert yourself well, the only potential issue with more rounds shorter with the break in between is if that enables kind of what a standing 8 count does. If it would enable someone to get beat on for 2 minutes, but not retired, and then get a minute to recover just enough to get beat on for another 2 minutes. But the solution to that is having good referees and good corners, not necessarily affecting, and on the flip side, I mean, I'm sure you've had sparring in fights where something happened that you were working on recovering from, and it happened early in the round. You got caught with something you didn't see coming. And then between rounds, you're able to kind of shake the cobwebs off and you could intelligently defend yourself. So with if that kind of thing happens to someone, especially if you've got 2 fighters who are either well matched or the fighter who's not quite as skillful, they just get that lucky shot in, having that break may let the other fighter recover. So like I said, as long as you're not, as long as having shorter rounds and more breaks is not just letting someone who's clearly outclassed endure punishment for a longer period of time, then I think it's fine.
Right. Okay. I will accept that as something positive, and the fact that we are extending those rounds, because I think that it just makes a lot of sense. My final question for you is, and I have to say this, and by the way, you did such a great job. Listen, I want to say in the COVID era, that's what I want to say. I want to say, oh, thank you for all your help in the COVID era, as though it passed, as though absolutely gone away. So I got to ask you, because I'm a little, I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of upset right now about this, because, I worked my butt off, right? And everybody else did, who were trying to, quote unquote, do the right thing to make this COVID thing go away. So now we're talking about going backwards, okay? Now, again, I follow whatever protocols you put. You tell me I got to wear a mask, I'm going to wear it, right? But now listen, I did the vaccinations, Doc. I did everything. I protected thousands of people at my events. People came out and they had a good time. And we were, like I said, virus-free, best that I know. So now we're talking about at a point where, we're talking about putting a mask on, even for the vaccinated, right? And all of that. Please help me better understand this, because again, look, I'm going to follow ultimately what they say, but right now I must admit I might be a little bit resistant right now. Is that normal? Is that a normal feeling right now that I should have? Or?
I mean, it's normal in that every other person that I know is in the same spot. you know, it's frustrating, and I understand the thought process that has been sort of explained. You know, I read the same things in the media that you have. You know, I some people seem to think that physicians get some sort of like secret messages from the government telling them the real deal, and I wish that was the case. Or if it is, I'd like to get subscribed to that email list. But the concern is simply that the Delta variant that exists now, although the vaccination that you and I both got is still very, very effective against that variant. And the best data I have about that, I have a good friend that's in the Charleston area. So in Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester County, in the last month, they've had 1,000 some odd cases of COVID that have led to either hospitalization or, you know, needing medical attention of some sort. And of those, only a handful were people who were vaccinated. Whereas if the vaccination wasn't effective against the Delta variant, you would expect that it would have been more like, you know, half of them, because about 50% of the population in those counties has been vaccinated. But the concern is they found a couple of cases where someone who had been vaccinated and got a breakthrough infection with the Delta variant had viral loads in the same neighborhood of numbers as someone who wasn't vaccinated. So that raises the specter again that you could be vaccinated, get an infection, and although it doesn't present a significant risk to you, you could potentially spread it to other people. Now, this is the same thing that we heard right when they started doing the vaccinations and said, but you got to still wear your mask. And then they learned that people who got the vaccination, one, weren't getting COVID, and two, if they did get COVID, which was very rare and continues to be very rare, their viral loads were orders of magnitude lower than people that hadn't been vaccinated. So the risk that someone who was vaccinated would be spreading COVID to other people was quite small. And it still seems like it's small with the Delta variant, at least based on what I've read so far, but it's probably a little bit more likely than it was before the Delta variant existed.
I think, though, now this is me. Like I said, I followed your advice and I followed the doctors, just doing the right thing. So am I okay with possibly saying that with the variant, that the Delta variant, that people might be getting sick, but the death rate certainly is nowhere near it was with the COVID-19. And if it starts going up, if it starts the deaths, not the infections, but the deaths start going up, that would be the signal to start paying a little bit more attention? Or is that something I should be paying attention to now just because of the infections?
I mean, that sounds like a perfectly logical, because that's basically the same place. And like you said before, just so people know, you and I didn't talk about this before, but that's basically where I am with the same. You know, I wear a mask at work, but that's different because I'm seeing people who are at risk. They're in the hospital, and there's a significant expectation that there's no chance, or you want your physician and medical staff to be doing everything they possibly can to make sure there's not going to be a chance that I give a patient or a patient's family some sort of infection.
I understand that.
Now, running out in the community is a different scenario. So your assessment that the death rate from the Delta variant seems lower does seem accurate. And there's probably a number of reasons for that. One, the people who are at greatest risk for dying from COVID, they've already had 18 months to potentially get COVID. And unfortunately, a lot of them have and didn't survive. So if the highest risk people are not in the equation anymore, you would expect the death rate to be lower. And then on the good side of the coin, when the vaccine became available for the 65 plus, there was a very high acceptance rate of that. I don't know in South Carolina what the vaccination rate is in the highest risk population. So not just 65 plus, but 65 plus with other morbidity factors, obesity, respiratory disease, living in a nursing home, things like that. But I guarantee that it's way higher than the vaccination rate of the general population. So, there's been a lot of talk about how there's a lot of kids, minors that now have COVID-19 with the Delta variant because they haven't gotten vaccinated, but their incidence of getting sick is way, 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 way less. And because their incidence of getting sick is less, their incidence of significant complications is less. and therefore the death rate is significantly lower. So if that continues to be the case, then I think they're going to have a hard time getting a significant portion of the population, especially people who are vaccinated and their friends and family and close contacts are vaccinated, and they don't have contact with people who are really high risk. I think they're going to have a very difficult time getting compliance with masking, largely because of what I'm trying to avoid using any pejorative terms, what a circus the political surroundings of the recommendations were and the mixed messages that were used early. Yeah. And this is, where we stand right now is exactly why it was so important for this to have been handled differently from the get-go.
Right. Well, you know what? Again, I'm gonna just play it by ear, but I'm certainly, and this is not to spread anything, but I'm just not ready to dive back into it unless if I start seeing the deaths and everything go up. I had this doctor on my show one time told me that when they said, hey, if I got the vaccination, I no longer have to wear a mask. That was probably pretty much the last time I was going to wear a mask. I just remember that comment very clearly, and it keeps playing in my mind because I kind of think the same way.
Yeah, we were having a conversation at work with one of the infectious disease doctors just a couple of weeks ago, just before the Delta variant and the infection number started trending up. We were talking about how long we thought it was going to be before we'd be able to get rid of the masking requirement at the hospital, because the seriousness in which people have taken that requirement as the cases were dropping. I mean, because, 4, 5, 6 months ago, we had a couple hundred people in the hospital with COVID. We were seeing it all the time. We had kids in the PICU with it. And now the numbers are going back up, and there's some more people in the hospital. I think our hospital system's back up into the low hundreds, like 110, 111 people, which is way higher than it was a couple of weeks ago. But we haven't seen this concomitant increase in the serious complications and deaths like we had before, but the numbers are going up, and that's, we're just kind of waiting to see how high they go and whether we start seeing significant increases in deaths as well. So people are trying to be as conservative as possible to try to minimize the risk of that. I'm sorry, what were you starting to say?
I was going to say, I'm sorry. Are these people in the hospital now, are a lot of them being intubated? Are they or not?
I mean, the short answer to that is not a lot of them, because, very early on, especially in New York City, they were intubating people largely because of hypoxia, not so much because they were having actual problems exchanging, getting rid of carbon dioxide, which is usually what causes people to get intubated. And it was relatively quickly learned that was not a good idea. The people who are hospitalized in our hospital system with COVID currently are almost exclusively adults. There's very few kids, and as of the last time I walked through the ICU, there were 0 kids in our pediatric ICU. So I don't have any direct interaction with the care of the adults in things like that with their care. So I don't know exactly how many are, but I haven't heard the same. There was all the concerns months ago or a year ago about we're going to run out of ventilators, we're not going to have enough respiratory therapists and blah, blah, blah. And fortunately, that didn't come to fruition then. And I've not heard similar concerns now, partially because I think that the use of ventilators is much more conservative than it was. And hospital systems have had a year to prepare for this kind of thing now, so that they're not caught on their heels quite the same as they were when this initially popped up.
Right. Well, like I said, I'm always looking for great advice from you, Doc. I know you have a busy schedule this weekend, and just the fact that you took the time to chat with me a little bit today, I'm always appreciative. And I know we're going to see you real soon. We got the East Coast Classic coming up in October. Looking forward to having you there that weekend. I'm just putting a stamp on you just in case somebody tries to call you that weekend.
Yeah, no, I'm there. We talked about that. Yeah, we're good.
Right. And I'll, always appreciate you and everything and all that you've done for the fight community. I mean, you're everywhere, and people really appreciate your time and attention and your care to the fight community.
So I appreciate that. I had 2 parting thoughts to jump back to the kidney things.
Yes.
One, you had mentioned that you look great, you recovered, you're doing good. And you said you thought part of that might be because you exercise, and we didn't really talk about that, but that's very true. And this is a great example of why physical fitness is so important, because no matter what the illness is, there's not any illness where being in bad shape is going to give you an advantage over being in good shape. But people, so we clone Johnny Davis, but we have evil Johnny Davis who never got involved in fight sports, never got involved in physical fitness. So you're overweight, you've got pre-diabetes, maybe hypertension, maybe you drink a lot more and you're not in good shape. If you got the same thing, it would be much harder for you to recover. And especially if you had hypertension, which is very bad for your kidneys, you might have already had kidneys that were really sick. And this might have been what tipped them over the edge, because that happens to a lot of people. They have pre-existing kidney disease, and then they get something like a kidney stone, or they get dehydrated from gastroenteritis, and that's what leads to them developing kidney failure. So use your course of, this was terrible, but look, I'm fine now, as a reason why anybody who's sitting here watching that going, man, I wonder if I should try to get in better shape. The answer is absolutely. And the same thing with coronavirus.
Right.
If you get a respiratory infection and you're overweight and you have a lot of other issues potentially related to that, sleep apnea, hypertension, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or things like that, it makes your risk of having serious problems with coronavirus, other respiratory viruses, any illness much higher. So good reason to get in better shape. And then for all the fighters who are watching this, you mentioned renal failure and kidney failure. When you hear about someone who was sent to the hospital when they were cutting weight, so they had to cancel their fight, that's usually what they have, is renal failure. And people die from that. Fighters have died from that. So when you're thinking about what weight to sign up for at the East Coast Classic, the one that's going to require you to have to sit in a sauna for an hour and sweat off, 10 pounds of water weight, that's not the right weight class for you. Doing that kind of water weight cutting is very dangerous for your kidneys.
Very solid point right there. Doc, there's also someone that made a comment, and I just saw it. It says Cherokee Survival. It says, he's kind of asking you a question, but I don't know if I understand the question. Can you?
I sort of, and that's why I was kind of stumbling my words, because I was looking at the same thing. Okay. So I'll read what he says out loud. It says, is C19 survival is 99. I'm assuming he means 99%. And then Vax's DC19 is 97. I don't know what the L. It looks like he's typing again. So is the coronavirus survival 99%? I don't know the exact statistic off my head, but it's close to that. There's hundreds of thousands, actually millions of people that have gotten coronavirus. And of those, a relatively small percentage has died. And it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1% or so, give or take a percent. Mm-hmm. The problem is because so many millions of people have gotten it, that means that there's been hundreds of thousands of Americans that have died from it, and millions of people around the world that have died from it. Mm. So the survival rate is high. It's, thank God, because if the survival rate was as low as they initially thought that it might be, meaning that, they initially thought that the death rate from coronavirus was going to be like 10% or so. And if that was the case, there'd been, it would have been nearly an apocalypse. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I'm not 100% sure what he was asking with the vaccine. I don't, if he can expound on that a little bit, I'll be happy to potentially answer that, but I'm not sure
But the Cherokee community has been another community that was ravaged pretty hard with the COVID, wasn't it? Not just the Cherokee community, but Native Americans in general.
Yeah, so any community, like most Native American communities that have had sub-ideal access to healthcare historically, have had more problems with this than others. I thought, at least initially, the local First Nation Cherokee community closest to us, kind of in the South Carolina, North Carolina area, they did pretty well from the get-go, because their law enforcement basically shut the native lands down. They stopped letting people that weren't part of the community driving through, and that helped initially. I'm not familiar enough with Native health to know what the numbers in their community is like since then, but I would imagine that what you said is probably correct. I would imagine that because, just like most minorities in the United States, they tend to be disproportionately affected by any health crisis. It's probably the case that the Native community in the United States is probably disproportionately affected by coronavirus as well, because a lot of the other health conditions that are prevalent in that community because of the substandard access to healthcare. Right. So diabetes, hypertension, obesity, sleep apnea are all risk factors for coronavirus. So I would imagine that that's probably the case, but I don't have the data off the top of my head to back that up.
Right. Man, I tell you, awesome. I mean, that went into a couple of subjects there, but I really appreciate always, Doc, your time and attention to just talking to us. We've been doing this for a few years now, I mean,
Yep.
Time really flies. How many years we've been doing this? And you know what? We've gotten thousands and thousands of views on these things. And I know for a fact that it's helped some people, along the way. And I want to continue that. There's so many different, issues out there that we can cover, we can talk about, in the fight community. And I hope that people can appreciate at least the effort and trying to educate people and those who will follow some of the suggestions and everything that you're putting out there and all that. I certainly do appreciate it. But again, Doc, thanks so much for being on Johnny Davis Live. Real talk, real solutions. We'll talk to you again real soon, sir.
See you. Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you so much. All right. Be safe out there.
Thanks. You too.
Yes, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, they're speaking with Dr. John Lucas. They're always such a pleasure and so much knowledge and information he's passing on to the fight community and anyone out there, right, in Facebook land. We certainly do appreciate it. And we have an ongoing series with Dr. Lucas. As you see, our health chat there. He comes on and he talks about, different things about health and fitness and things that you need to know to live the best life that you can live. Again, I just want to remind everyone as well about the East Coast Classic that's coming up again. It's going to be a really, really exciting event there, as some of you have been out there.
Lyrics from your hood to suburban kids. Back in the day, recognize they paved the way. To them this song we dedicate. The real
I like that beat, guys. That's pretty fun. All right, guys, look here. That's all I have for you today. I want to thank everybody again for watching yet another edition of Johnny Davis Live, where it's real talk, real solutions. We hope everybody be safe out there this weekend. We still are suggesting that you get that vaccine, guys. I think it's going to be great for you so we can get moving forward again. As always, guys, be your best. Respect one another. Forward march. This is Johnny Davis Live, and I'm checking out. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.